All right, here we go. Joining me now, Super Bowl champion, U.S. Congressman Burgess Owens. Welcome to the Alec Lace Show.
I'm looking forward to this. Absolutely. It's a great topic and looking forward to chatting with you. Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you, Congressman, we talk about so many things going on in the political world. We try to solve this, we throw money at that. But in my opinion, I think it's the parenting crisis that we're having in this country. And the key point of that is the fathers that are not in the homes raising the children. I think if we could get dads back in the home, we could solve a lot of these problems and we wouldn't have to throw a ton of money at them. So what's your take on this fatherless epidemic that's crushing the country here?
Well, first of all, it's not hypothetical. It's the reality of where our country works. It's the reality of basically how any society that's really going to move forward. You have to have a solid family unit, and that starts with a father who understands the responsibility he has to have to make things work. I was really fortunate, by the way. When I'm talking about it's not hypothetical, I grew up in a home in a time where dads were taught that your responsibility is to make sure you take care of your kids and you're committed to your family, to your wife, and that you want to leave a legacy. And I grew up in that home. And just as let's as a backdrop, because things that a lot of Americans don't understand or don't know because we haven't been taught, is the success of the Black community back when I was growing up, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, what we were doing in those days to actually command respect because of meritocracy. We believed in the basic four tenets: faith, family, free market, and education. And we always had dads in the home to not only discipline our young men, but to show them what it was to respect our ladies and women. So I'm very, very blessed to have been raised when I was raised. And these conversations we need to have because the community that I grew up in is no longer the community that we see today.
I think to your point, I agree, Congressman. To your point, I mean, my father was 50 years old when he had me. He was born in 1930, so he came from a different generation than most of the kids I grew up with their parents. They were like baby boomers. He was born a generation before them, and he had that, like, just like you said back then, it was you were ashamed of yourself if you didn't step up to your responsibilities. Like you were looked down upon if you were a guy that left the family and wasn't involved. Now today, people do it and they feel like they're entitled to just leave the family and leave their responsibilities behind. And we got to this crucial point, and I just want to get your take on this too, because I think we're failing our kids in another aspect where we just seen the coach of this South Carolina championship basketball team, which is a great story, undefeated team, legendary coach in the sport. And then she's asked about letting men play against the girls, and she caves because she's so afraid of the backlash from the cancel culture that she says, yeah, if you consider yourself to be a woman, then you could play. I mean, what are we doing to our girls? Like, how come we're not protecting? And where are the parents that are standing up saying, you're not going to allow a dude in the locker room with my daughter? I mean, this is getting out of hand.
Well, it's called lack of courage. We've turned our country over the last few decades into a bunch of cowards. And that's what kind of come to that understanding. I'll tell you what I was taught. I could kind of describe it in a few words. This is as I was as a youth in the 60s. I grew up, by the way, in Tallahassee, Florida. There's a segregation, but it was a great community to grow up in because young men were taught one simple thing. You learn to love God, country, family, respect women, and authority. And we've lost all of that. And this is a good example when you start not even understanding how to protect our little girls, our women. We cannot do that as men. We're not men anymore. So no, we have to get back to basics. I will say this, let me just make this one point because in terms of a perspective of what I grew up in, it's important to know what happens when you believe in fathers being in the home and respecting and developing that legacy. 40s, 50s, and 60s. Because I was raised by that generation of men who came back from World War II, very proud of who they were. Not only did they build the greatest middle class we've ever seen, but the Black community led our country to growth of middle class. Men matriculated from college, men committed to marriage. Up until 1970, Black women had a higher percentage of marriage than white women up until 1970. And the percentage of entrepreneurs. We believed in risk takers, meritocracy. That's what happens. You have men in the family, in the home, heading that home that's protecting that family and wanted to have a legacy that his name is not only accepted, but proud of as we pass on as a legacy. So we have to get back to that. And again, this old idea, this crazy Marxist mess that's going on, where we can't even describe what a man and a woman is, that has to change because it is not only terrible for women, but it also does not allow men to do and grow up and be who they should be, protectors, providers, and leaders.
Well said. And let's be honest, Congressman, this is by design, though. This didn't happen here by mistake, because who is benefiting from the broken families in this country? The welfare state, it lives off of single mothers. That's its bread and butter. So you have so many women now that are co-parenting with the government. They are married to the government now. And so it's like it just keeps feeding that same machine. You have the family court system in this country that has pulled so many dads that made it so impossible for them to even be involved in their life. They have their battles with the ex that turns the father against the kid. And then you have the court system that sides with the mother. So we are creating more absentee fathers in this country by pushing them out. Number one, we incentivize the mom to marry the government. And number two, the family court pushes the dad out and pushes the mom towards the welfare state.
Well, you nailed it. Yes, you nailed it. Again, I watched this happen in real time. When I was a young kid, I remember as I started to build these poverty homes, these communities. The only thing that the women had to do, if they could live there free, as long as there was no man in the house, they were not married. And you put that in place. You saw some of these young boys growing up in that kind of environment. They're going to grow up not understand what man really looks like. So no, you're right. It is on purpose, and it will be purposely that we'll turn this thing back around. In fact, we're having these conversations. The books that the kind of books that you're writing, that people begin to understand. This is a process, and it's not normal and natural that our country is this way. And until we turn it around, we will never get to be that place of becoming a more perfect union. We have to make sure we get the fathers, men back doing what they're supposed to do, protect, providing, and being a good leader and a partner to their wives.
Well, the second part of that I talk about too is the Heavenly Father has been removed from our society. So that's the combination here, the 1-2 punch that's happened. The Father out of the home, Heavenly Father out of society. Faith has been looked down upon and destroyed. You got the President of the United States mocking the holiest day in Christianity, calling it a transgender day of visibility. And so we've kind of kicked God to the curb as well here. So we have, if you have no center in your life of a higher power, of looking up to God the Father, and you have no father male role model in the house, your chances of success are shattered right from the jump.
It is. And go back to what I was mentioning before, those 4 tenets that really highlights and helps us understand what this country is all about. Faith, family, the free market, and education. That promise, those who tie those tenets, those who believe in those tenets, no matter how you get here, what race you are, how much money you have, you tie to that, you will live your American dream. And I'll tell you what I'm excited about is that we've always had a country that has believed in the concept of the godly concepts of becoming a more perfect union, looking at each other inside out, not outside in. That is where we begin, and that's where that's within our DNA. So you're right. They're over the years, these Marxists, the socialists have taken away those tenets that makes our country what it is, but we're coming back. This is what I'm so excited about the American people. If you look at who we are, we have this tendency of kind of living this little freedom bubble. And we go out and build our dreams, our families, and we forget sometimes there's evil at our doorstep. We now know there's been evil at our doorstep. And once we realize that, just like it was in 9/11, Pearl Harbor, we come out of our freedom bubble, we fight for the rights to get back to who we are. And then once we win that fight, of course, we go back into focusing on our dreams again. But we're at that point now that America's waking up, and I'm excited about being part of it. I think all of us should know this is our moment. This is our time. If we want to get our country back, this is the time to get on the field and really hustle, get it done.
Amen, Congressman. I think parents have woken up, and I think parents are really the underdog here, and they're going to be the underlier in this 2024 election here in November, because they've woken up and they are tired of it. They are tired of this stuff getting pushed into the schools. Now, the education system is another part of this, because they're jamming this stuff, and the COVID woke a lot of people up to this because they were able to see what the hell was going on in the school system, and they're jamming this stuff down their kids' throats, and they're allowing men to be in the bathroom with their daughters. And so a lot of parents are ticked off of what they're seeing. Not only that, you got this influx of people coming through the border that are sucking up the resources in the neighborhoods. And now all of a sudden they're using the school systems. They're using the libraries. They're using all the, the bus stops, the police stations. They're filling up all these places with illegals, and they're catering to them. And it's really hurting the families, not only financially, but also physically. You're seeing harm being done. Obviously, the Laken Riley is the highlight case there with that. But these are people that shouldn't be in the country, and they're harming, and it's affecting parents. And I think it's a major issue for November.
It's a major issue. And I said, you start off your comments by saying this, people are tired. One thing I'm hearing across the board, it doesn't matter what race, what side of the aisle we're sitting on, we're sick and tired of what we've seen the last few years. And you're right, COVID was the beginning of it. that kind of pull back the curtains and see that our kids are under attack. Then we have BLM riots in which those who are destroying and killing are getting away with it. And people saying, this is not America. This is not who we should be. And then we see October 7th, where we realize our children here have no idea what empathy is, have no idea what evil looks like. And we pull back and say, what in the world is going on in our country? Well, we believe in make sure we're raising our kids to give them a much better future. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is that their future is at risk. So we're definitely coming back. And what I'm excited about is not only those of us who've had this conservative, have had this, we're part of the Republican Party, I am, but we're also seeing those part of the other parties that are realizing they want to vote for their values. It doesn't mean that they become Republicans, but they're going to vote now for the values that they know are the values they believe in: safety, having a dream, having a business, make sure your kids are growing up and having a great future. Those things have been taken away from us, and we're realizing no matter where we sit on the aisle, what background we have, what color we are, that we want to be Americans. We want to have the dreams that America's always promised us. So I'm excited about where we are, because the left, the Marxists, have taken it way too far. They went so far, so fast, kind of thinking they were going to bully us into this place and have us get there through fear. And the last things Americans will do is we do not respond very well with fear. We might pull back for a minute. We realize what's going after us and the bullies that's coming after us. We respond in a particular way, and that's what's going on right now. We're coming back strong. I'm excited about this particular phase we're going through in November of this year. Is going to be a good one for us for sure.
I love how you put that, Congressman, because they have taken these values away from Democrats as well. Like, the media has done such a good job of making us think like Democrats are the Germans in 1933, or the Republicans are the enemy of the Soviet. Like, we hate each other so much at this point. We think every Democrat is evil, or Democrats think every Republican is evil, and it's not the case. We all share these same values as Americans, and we got to get back to that if we want to have a chance to save this country. But when you have now, I want to ask you your take on this, because a lot of parents right now, I'm in a situation here. I have 4 kids. My oldest senior in high school. Colleges are looking at for next year. You have the President of the United States forgiving college loans. So what he's basically doing, all these people that have their college degree, which apparently they bought because they can't seem to find a job to get back the money to pay off these college loans, he's begging the uneducated people to pay off these loans, and now they're footing the bill to us. So what is it saying about the college system in this country, where so many kids went through the system and came out on the other side and can't pay back the loans and are begging for it? And then number 2, Biden goes against the Supreme Court and he's paying them off, in a sense, buying votes.
Well, let's start off with Biden first. We've never seen an administration that is lawless as this one here. We've never seen an administration that's so successful at failure. And at the upside of being so successful at failure, that American people are just sick and tired of it. That's not within our DNA. We want to win. We want to have a big hope. So this president is really kind of, again, pulling back the curtains again. We're starting to see what Marxism looks like with the hard left, the heartless left that hates faith, family, the free market education. We now know what it looks like, and we're going to run away from that as fast as we can. So Democrats, Republicans, independents, we're going to start voting our values. And just know, within the Democratic Party, there are good people there, but it's been driven by Marxists. They're that's a very evil ideology. It's all about destruction and hopelessness. And so the Democratic Party, those in that party have to recognize your party has been taken over. It's been corrupted. And so you need to realize, go back to your values. Don't worry about being a Republican. Be an American, vote your values, and good things will happen. In terms of education, once again, we've had a slow march of Marxism for decades now within this system. We now see things like DEI, which took 30 years to propagate itself and to begin to build itself, in which people are told and taught to hate each other, that there's an oppressor and an oppressed, that Blacks are the most hapless and hopeless and weak people, because we're going to be oppressed no matter what. And it's based on skin. It's the most racist thing you could possibly see. And so what's happening right now, because of this last year, because the Republicans, by the way, have been a majority, we've been able to hold hearings. We've been able to educate the American people what's going on. This is one of the best things that could have happened. We're going to look back as a miracle one day, that we can now, even though we don't have the majority that we need to have to make a lot of policy changes, we've been able to educate the people that there needs to be changes. And the first thing we need to do is look at our educational system and disrupt it. The product should be a good a good American coming out productive, excited, and hopeful. What the colleges have done, institutions, turned that around, and their focus, their outcome is how much money can they make, and they don't care what the product is, what the outcome is, and that's going to change. And I'm going to thank the American people for giving the Republican Party an opportunity to be leaders in this, to have the hearings, to give our thoughts on how we need to change this, and we will change this. By the way, President Trump, with a Republican Party House with a majority and a Senate, well, we're going to start looking at education and changing it the way it should be, because it's a national security issue. We need to make sure our kids can think, that they're proud of who they are, that they know our history, and they have a great vision for our future. We cannot do that if we do not educate our kids in the right way. So we're looking forward to making that change in a big way.
Well said. And that does tie right back to the fatherless crisis, because 70%, 71% of all high school dropouts are coming from fatherless homes. And we look at some of these neighborhoods where we've thrown a ton of money. Even LeBron James, he's thrown millions of dollars at his I Promise school over there. And in 3 years, not a single kid passed the math test. It's not the money. The money isn't what's missing. It's the fathers that are missing in the community. That's the main key to all this. And this is the reason why we're failing before they even try to get to that collegiate level. And then they're getting in there, and the college level is failing. They come out, like you said, with these degrees that are useless. So I think the family it all starts in the home. And if we could just secure these nuclear family units, I think the education problem goes away as well.
Well, keep this in mind, and I want to go back to the community I grew up in. At the time, in the segregated South, we didn't have a lot of opportunities outside of our home, but we understood very simply that education was the gateway. So, and we also believe this: we were not assimilated in those days. We were not across the board, where every community was doing their own thing. But one thing we had in common: we loved America, we loved being Americans, and we believed that the way to command respect was to win. So every community, whether it be the Italian, the Jewish, the Black, we were and within our own communities, making sure that we did the very, very best to move forward and make things happen. I want to make this one point. This is so important. We realize what is at the crux of our success or failure. It was one of the Thomas Jefferson said, "Ignorant and free can never be." Our country has always been built on intelligence, on thinking, on innovation, thinking outside the box. This dream of America that we were not a perfect union, but we could be, came from educated people. We now have a place in which, in 2017, the state of California, 75% of the Black boys in the state of California could not pass standard reading and writing tests. 75% could not read, could not write. We have here in Baltimore this last year, 23 schools, zero proficiency in math. Now, the problem that we have is not only are we not educating our kids, but we've gotten to the point where we have such low thoughts, low expectations for Black Americans that we can hear this and just let it just pass by. We're at a position right now, we have to make sure that no matter where these kids are coming from, what their background is, when you hear that kind of failure, every American should be upset. Every American should be on board. I will say that because of COVID, we went from a place of sympathy for a lot of Americans because they could see things not happening in other parts of the country, but their kids were going to be okay, they thought. COVID pulled back the curtain, and we realize now no child is safe. No district is safe. No state is safe. These termites, these Marxists, these folks that are going, their purpose is to destroy and divide us, they're everywhere. And so now that we understand that, there's something called empathy. We now have empathy with each other. And Americans are talking to each other like we never have before, because we realize we have something in common. And we want to make sure that all of our kids now succeed, because if they do not succeed, it will impact the rest of our kids. So we're at a really good place, and sad it had to happen where we had so much pain and misery. But because of that, we just have this tendency as Americans, when we're under attack, we realize it, we talk more together, we think more together, we invent, innovate, we come across those areas that we might not agree on. And we're at that point now, we're ready to take our country back. And I'm excited about that process for sure.
And we want to win. I mean, that's the American. We want to win at everything we do. We want to be winners at stuff, and we want to achieve. And it's like, to your point, last week I had Dr. Ben Carson on the show, and he's a guy too that you would think would be looked up to in the Black community. This is a guy that came from an impoverished neighborhood, that came from nothing, and became one of the top neurosurgeons in the world. Like, his story is amazing. But yet, because he's a Republican, because he's on the conservative side, it's like okay to be almost like as racist as they want to and say these god-awful wonderful things about him and knock him down. It's like the same thing like Larry Elder. I had him on. It's like, they call him the black face of white supremacy. Like, how could you get away with stuff like that? They justify, like, as long as it's like, this is the same thing with Donald Trump, Congressman. It's like, they feel like it's okay to break the law. It's okay to break the Constitution and go against the norm because he's that evil. So we justify it. It's so, well, we did have to break the law, but we got this evil person. And that's the way that they're justifying it to their base, that it's okay to go after Dr. Carson. You can say what you want because he's the evil person.
Well, go back again. Here's another quote from Karl Marx, the first battleground in the writing of history. Why does Marxists want to destroy, steal our history? You steal our history, you take our pride from our past, our appreciation for our present, and our vision for our future. It's just that simple. They can redirect, they can rescript who we are. The fact is, when I talked about the success of my community back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I make that point as often as I can because people don't know that. Blacks and whites have no idea that within that segregated community, we were kicking butt. We were sending our kids out and they were succeeding in their businesses. They were succeeding in education. They were going out and becoming the Clarence Thomas, the Dr. Carsons, the Condoleezza Rice. That was the environment that I grew up in. And it was an environment that I didn't see a white American until I really spent time with a white American until I was 16 years old. But in between, before that process, I learned to be proud of our country, be proud of my race, and have the highest expectations because our parents expect that of us. So just know the way that the left changes and disrupts our future is a takeaway any essence of what our past is all about. And then, of course, they will destroy anyone who's succeeding that goes against their narrative. So no, they're not going to highlight the Dr. Carsons. They're going to highlight the guys in the hood, the guys who have tattoos everywhere. They can't speak. They do not know how to speak the language. Do not respect women. That's what they're going to highlight because that is the race they won't love us to believe that we are, and we're going to fight up against that. And that's what I'm excited about. By the way, of those who are beginning to go back to our roots, our conservative roots, and saying that's not who we are. We are Americans. We're proud of who we are. We have a proud history, and we're going to make sure that we're part of that process of bringing our country back. So I'm really glad where we are right now, and I see so many great things as we move forward. To the next few years for sure.
I love your optimism, and I'm right there with you. But when you have people at home that don't even stand for the national anthem, turn their backs on the national anthem, that hate this country, that come from this country, and now we're importing a whole bunch of people that hate this country. We just seen in Michigan, you have all these people chanting "Death to America," yeah. And in that district in Michigan, the congressperson, the representative, is Rashida Tlaib, who also hates the country. So not only are you importing people that hate the country, we got people in our own Congress that hate this country. So we got major problems to fix at all these levels, and we need people like you say, to be proud and to love this country. Otherwise, what is worth fighting for?
Just understand the most powerful three words in the history of mankind is we the people. The conversation we're having right now, what's exciting to me is this is happening everywhere. When I have lunches, have dinners, it is amazing how everyone's conversations about what's going on right now. We're seeing the fact of what's going on at the border. It's a very obvious national security issue. We're seeing that we have a president who doesn't care about that. We're seeing the crime rates going up. We have this conversation about men and women, and we realize it makes no sense. So the fact that we're at this position where all of Americans are having this same conversation means that we, the people, will be making the right decisions as we move this country back. I think what the left does not understand, they believe in using misery as a political strategy. That's what they are. They believe that they can make us hopeless and angry and divided. What they never understood is the power and the DNA within the American people. We, the people, will drift toward freedom every chance we get. We kind of take for granted that's the direction we're going to go in. We take for granted that's the way our future will be. And once we wake up and realize that we've been stopped from getting there, we cannot build our business. We cannot go to our churches. We cannot have our kids in a school where they're taught how to read and write. When that comes to that position where we see it, we're going to do something about it. And that's where we are right now. We, the people, the power of who we are is coming to fruition. And I'm excited, number one, to be alive today, to see our country come back the way it is. And I'll say this for everybody who's listening. This is our moment. Know that we're here for a reason, that you're able to engage. You're hearing these kind of conversations so you can go out and we can hustle and get our country back. And we can look back on time and history and realize that we were there. We brought our country back from the abyss. When we were about to go over this dark abyss of Marxism that they've been going after for decades, but we realized that we love our country. more than we love this ideology of dependency. And we're going to say to our grandkids that we're part of that process. And I'm excited about that because this is America. This is what we do when we find out we're at war, and we win. Just win, baby. That's what we do best. And I'm excited about getting that done for sure.
Yeah, and last thing to get you out here, it all comes down to November, Congressman, because if we don't get it in November, the chances of us bringing it back from the depths of the ocean here are very, very slim. So we got to get it in November. It's the most important election. We say it every year. It's the most important election. I think this is the one here. We got to get it. I think Trump is doing a great job. We just seen his fundraising campaign do twice as much as what Biden did. He didn't have any ex-presidents there with him or no celebrity guests to do it with him. He's getting the big donors now. He's got the grassroots movement. So I think it's all coming together. The key is, can we get a legit election in November? Can we get people out to vote? Can we register people to vote? How do you think this all shapes up coming down in November? Give me your last take.
I think you hit it on the head. This is our moment. I'll just go back real quickly. The year that I won the Super Bowl back in 1981, it was a team that was underdogs, a team that was supposed to be rebuilding. But what happened to that team is throughout that season is that week by week, we began to believe in each other. We began to have this attitude that I will not be the weak link. Every position felt the same way. And every position said, I'm going to make sure I hustle more than anyone else. And the minute I touch the field, I'm going to give everything I can. This is our moment as a country to be the same way. We need to come out of the stands, come off the sideline. Whatever we're doing in the past has been keeping us really busy. Now's our time to win our country back. Whatever that talent is, we all have talents. It might be to be that person just gives a big smile in the room and this room lights up. If that's your talent, now's our time to use it. If it's fundraising, if it's going out there knocking doors, this is our time. And you're right. President Trump is an example of what makes our country right. He's a fighter. He does not like being bullied. He's a patriot. You feel good just listening to him. It's hopefulness. And that's what our country's always been about. So now's our time that we, the people, just whoever's listening, know that we have to do whatever you can. Be exhausted, and let's be exhausted in November 5th, and we'll be victorious. And I'm looking forward to being that part of that process. I'm looking forward to all of us looking back, whatever our position might be, that we played our part the best we can, and we give our kids the remarkable future that they deserve. And also, the most important thing, we now know who the enemy is. So in 2025, we know how to get rid of it. And I'm very, very excited about that process too.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get it, Congressman. And you're right. I do feel that way. When I listen to Donald Trump, I do feel inspired. I feel pumped up. When I listen to Joe Biden, I feel dumber every time I hear him speak. So, but you got me fired up. I love the optimism. I pray we get there. Congressman Burgess Owens, thank you. I'd love to have you back on anytime. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time today on the Alec Show.
Let's do it as often as we can. I look forward to it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All the best. You take care.